joining today's NeedyMeds special topic webinar, the Liver Wellness Program, presented by the American Liver Foundation. My name is Carla. I am the Director of Education and Partnerships at NeedyMeds. And before we get started, I want to go over just a few points. If you have questions throughout the webinar, you can type them in at any time during the presentation into the questions section of your GoToWebinar control panel. But no, we will reserve answering questions until the end. If we don't have the time to answer your specific question, we will follow up with you personally via email. Of course, the contact information for both NeedyMeds and the American Liver Foundation will be provided. Also, this webinar is being recorded and will be available for viewing on our YouTube channel. There are copies of the PowerPoint presentations used during this webinar in the handout section of your GoToWebinar control panel. So with that, let's get started. For those of you not familiar with NeedyMeds, there is our mission statement and how we achieve our mission. But simply put, NeedyMeds connects people to programs that will help them afford their healthcare expenses. We do that free and anonymously through our website, needymeds.org, and our helpline, 1-800-503-6897. And I always put up a screenshot of our homepage because our website really is the face of our organization. And just a couple of things I want to point out. If you are looking for healthcare cost savings resources, you will find those under the Patient Savings tab. I mentioned that this webinar is being recorded and will be available for viewing on our YouTube channel, and you can find a link to that on the top right of our homepage. It's the third icon from the left. Also, our monthly e-newsletter, formerly known as Patient Assistance News, has a new look and a new name, Vitals. We hope you're able to subscribe to that by simply clicking on the Subscription Center link, and that'll help you to stay up to date on the latest from NeedyMeds. So with that, let's move on to today's webinar, the Liver Wellness Program, presented by Lindsay Ventura from the American Liver Foundation. So first, let me tell you a little bit about the American Liver Foundation. Their updated mission is to facilitate, advocate, and promote education, support, and research for the prevention, treatment, and cure of liver disease. Now let me tell you a little bit about our guest panelist, Lindsay. Lindsay Ventura is the Community Outreach and Education Manager for the American Liver Foundation New England Division. Lindsay holds a Bachelor's of Science degree in psychology with a minor in education from Northeastern University. Prior to joining the American Liver Foundation, Lindsay worked as a research assistant at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston. In her current role with the American Liver Foundation, Lindsay orchestrates all educational and programmatic delivery for Rhode Island, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine. And since beginning at the American Liver Foundation in October 2014, Lindsay has reached over 15,000 people through hundreds of programs she has organized. In 2018 alone, Lindsay reached nearly 5,000 people, including veterans, healthcare professionals, prisoners, and people in recovery from drugs or alcohol. In addition to her work for the American Liver Foundation in New England, Lindsay assists the national office with development of educational materials and programs such as this webinar today. So without further ado, and hopefully smoothly, I'm going to pass the screen and the mic to Lindsay, which will take just a moment, so bear with us during that transition and the silence. Oh, she did so quickly. And just a reminder that if you do have questions, don't hesitate to submit them by typing them into that questions section of your GoToWebinar control panel. And with that, I'll pass it to Lindsay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carla. Thank you to NeedyMeds for asking the American Liver Foundation to partner on today's webinar. And thank you to everyone who's tuning in to learn a little bit more about your liver. Truly, everybody has something that they need to learn about their liver, and it is so essential for everyday life. So I hope some of the information that we review today will be helpful to you. And as Carla said, please do feel free to ask questions as they arise, and we'll try to get to all of them at the end of today's presentation. So let me, for some reason, okay. The impact of liver disease. So we think a lot about our heart health. We think about our brain health and our lung health. Too often the liver is not thought about in terms of general overall health. I hope throughout today's presentation, I bring to your awareness why you should be worried about your liver's health. There are over 100 different kinds of liver diseases with many different causes. And unfortunately, many liver diseases are on the rise. So right now, hepatitis C and unfortunately A and B are also on the rise. But hepatitis C is a very deadly infectious disease. More people are dying from hep C than from the next 60 infectious diseases combined. We see a rise in fatty liver disease and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. I'll get into what those differences are, but actually global prevalence of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which I'll tend to refer to as NAFLD throughout the presentation today. Global prevalence is right around 24%, and the United States is among one of the higher risk nations. We're also seeing a rise in cirrhosis and primary liver cancer called hepatocellular carcinoma. Unfortunately, since 2000, increases of liver cancer have, liver cancer death rates have increased by almost 3% per year since 2000, and nearly tripling since 1980. So hopefully throughout the presentation today, you'll learn about how to keep your liver healthy, how to get it healthy if it's not, and how to be aware of some of these rising diseases. So the liver is a massive powerhouse. It is this big warehouse. It performs over 500 different functions. Its biggest role is to be like a filter in a fish tank. Whatever you eat, drink, breathe, or absorb through your skin is processed by your liver. Pretty much whatever your body sees, your liver will see it. It acts like this rechargeable battery. When you eat, it stores up energy and nutrients you don't need right away, and then when you need them, it lets it back out. Your liver is directly connected to your digestion. It helps to make bile to digest food. It stops our cuts from bleeding. So when you get a scab, that's your liver producing that ability to stop bleeding or to clot. The liver plays a really big role in the immune system, and it's able to break down anything that might be toxic or harmful to you. The liver is centrally located, as you can see in this diagram. It's seated on the right side of the body. So if you were to find the right side of your ribs, you'll kind of feel a layer of fat in your rib cage there. And that's providing this wonderful natural protection for your liver. It is one of your largest internal organs. It weighs between 3 and 5 pounds. And in a 24-hour time period, it goes through about 540 gallons of blood. So your blood is just continuously flushing through this liver to be processed. I recently heard a liver doctor refer to your liver as the Ellis Island of your body. So essentially everything stops in at your liver first, and then it's the liver's job to figure out what should we do with this. Should we break it down and get rid of it? Should I send it to another part of the body? Should I store it up to use it for later? And it's the liver that's really managing everything that your body's seeing. Our livers are also incredible organs. I may be a bit biased because I do work at the Liver Foundation. I think it might be your coolest organ. It has this incredible ability to regenerate. So as the liver gets damaged, it can replace broken down unhealthy cells with new healthy liver cells. This process can be small scale, which allows damage in the liver to regenerate over time, or it can be on a grand scale. We are actually able to do a live liver transplant, where we essentially cut the liver in half, and we would give half of it to a person who needs a transplant. And just about 2 months after that surgery, the liver has almost regenerated back to its full size. So, you know, just like a starfish or an earthworm, you can cut it and get another one. The liver is capable of that sort of regeneration. It truly is incredible. So even though the liver does regenerate, it can get damaged. So what we're seeing in these pictures here is what the progression of liver disease looks like. A lot of liver diseases result in pretty similar damage to the liver. So this is the damage we see in somebody who has fatty liver, whether from alcohol or from diet, somebody who might have a viral hepatitis or even an autoimmune condition. The damage we see in the liver looks pretty similarly. So this picture here, this is what a healthy liver looks like. It's beautiful, it's nice, it's red, it's smooth. This liver is in great shape. As the liver starts to get damaged, the first step tends to be hepatitis. Excuse me. Simply put, the word hepatitis means swollen liver. We tend to only hear that word hepatitis when we're talking about a virus, hepatitis B, hepatitis C, but your liver can inflame from any number of causes. If you have a fatty liver, you can get what's called steatohepatitis, inflammation from fat. You can have autoimmune hepatitis, inflammation from an autoimmune condition, or a viral hepatitis, so inflammation from a virus like hepatitis C. But so, first we have this great healthy liver, maybe it starts to get swollen, you enter into this place of hepatitis. And next I want you to think about when you get an injury to your skin. First, that injury or wound swells, and then it becomes scar tissue. And that's that same process happening in your liver. So first you see hepatitis, inflammation, and then scars start to form. Those scars are called fibroids or fibrosis. With fibrosis, this is reversible damage. If you can stop your liver in this point of scarring, give the body some nice healthy time, you can get back to this healthy liver again. A doctor might talk about staging your liver disease. With that, they're going to try to figure out how much scar tissue is present. So if you're given a grade of 1, 2, or 3, you're in this point of fibrosis where scar tissue has begun to form, your liver is still functioning pretty well, and that is reversible damage. When we're getting into a stage 4, that's when we're talking more about cirrhosis. So cirrhosis is another one of those words where we tend to only talk about it in the context of drinking. But cirrhosis just means extreme scarring of the liver. It's at that point where you have more scar tissue than actual healthy liver tissue. With cirrhosis, there certainly is a point of no return where you have too much damage, unfortunately not enough healthy tissue, so you might not be able to bounce back to a healthier version of your liver. We'll talk more about cirrhosis and what that means, but truly with cirrhosis, that's when people are going to feel very sick from their liver disease. They might get jaundicing, yellowing of the skin or the eyes. They might get a lot of fluid or retention and buildup, maybe swollen ankles, swollen stomach called ascites. Some people have internal bleeding or even mental confusion. I talked briefly about these 500 different functions of the liver, and it's really hard to appreciate what those functions are because it's not like the lung or the hearts where we have this physical experience of the function. But when somebody enters into cirrhosis and liver failure, that's when you truly start to appreciate those functions because they stop happening. And it's very unfortunate. Thankfully, the American Liver Foundation has a lot of different resources for people at any point along this spectrum. So what are the primary causes of liver disease that we see? These are the primary things that we see in the United States. So viruses, today we'll talk about hepatitis A, B, and C as common viruses that impact the liver. We do see genetic and autoimmune diseases. If you're aware of any sort of family history of liver disease, please do bring that to your doctor's attention. It's very important so that they can actually speak to your own liver's health. There are some hereditary illnesses such as hemochromatosis, and we do see some familial linkage between autoimmune diseases, something like autoimmune hepatitis or primary biliary cholangitis. We're not going to get so much into those today, but it is very important you tell your doctor about those sorts of conditions. We also see lifestyle choices impact our liver's health. So excessive alcohol use can lead to liver damage. As Carla mentioned earlier, I do a lot of education out in the community, and I find the one fact most folks know is that alcohol and the liver do not get along. We'll dive more into how alcohol can actually impact your liver. And then we're also seeing that NAFLD, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And that's directly linked to diet, obesity, and some metabolic issues like type 2 diabetes and high cholesterol. Again, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Also, we'll end the presentation talking about medications and chemicals. It's really important to talk to your doctor before starting any sort of medication, double checking labels, as there are a lot of different medications out there that can lead to liver injuries. So we'll get into that, as I said. So, like I said a little earlier, hepatitis simply means inflammation of the liver. There are a lot of different things that can lead to hepatitis. So those autoimmune diseases like autoimmune hepatitis, viruses like hepatitis B and C, alcohol and toxins, and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So let's dive into these main reasons of hepatitis and liver injury. So hepatitis A, B, and C, they sound very similar, but they're actually quite different. Hepatitis A is a virus that's only found in fecal matter. So this virus only lives in poop, and you get it through ingestion of infected fecal matter. This is common through poor water sanitation or food that may have been contaminated. Most people who are exposed to hepatitis A will be able to quickly bounce back within about a month. Most people do feel pretty sick, so you might get jaundicing, you might get extreme fatigue. There is the rare person who doesn't feel too sick with hepatitis A, but most people who are infected are aware they are infected. The good news about hepatitis A is that this is a virus that we can prevent with a vaccine. So you can talk to your doctor about getting a vaccination for hepatitis A. It tends to be a one-time shot. You get that and you're protected against the virus, even if you're exposed. There are some things that we can do to prevent further spread of hepatitis A. So hand washing and hygiene is essential for hepatitis A prevention. As I said, hepatitis A is only found in fecal matter. So if you're changing a diaper or going to the bathroom, making sure you wash your hands really well. There's a reason that restaurants have those signs, employees must wash hands before returning to work. Don't drink food or water that may have been contaminated. Often, if you're traveling to a country where Hep A is more prominent, your doctor will recommend a hepatitis A vaccination. Avoiding raw shellfish. As unfortunate as it is, raw shellfish could have a contamination of fecal matter with hepatitis A, so be mindful of that, especially if you have an immune system that's otherwise compromised. And then avoiding sexual behaviors that may expose you to fecal matter, such as oral or anal sex. I will briefly touch on the fact that you may or may not have seen in the news over the last year or so, there's been ongoing hepatitis A outbreaks in about 16 different states. There is more information about this outbreak on the CDC website, but this outbreak tends to be centered around people who are using drugs or people who are experiencing homelessness. The outbreak is now present in California, Utah, New Mexico, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, North Carolina, Florida, and here where I am in Massachusetts. Make sure that you're aware of anything happening in your state, and if you're concerned, you can certainly be vaccinated at your doctor's. We're then going to switch gears to hepatitis B. So hepatitis B is a virus, unlike Hep A that is only found in fecal matter. Hepatitis B lives in pretty much all of our bodily fluids. It's in blood, semen, vaginal fluid, and saliva. Where most people who are exposed to hepatitis B, they are able to fight this infection off on their own. They'll have what we call an acute infection. Basically, they'll get sick for about 6 months, but then their body can fight this virus off on its own. There's a small portion of healthy adults who will go on to develop this long-term, lifelong chronic infection. There is a vaccine for hepatitis B. We've been using it widespread here in the United States since about the 1980s on. We now actually vaccinate babies before they even leave the hospital with hepatitis B vaccines because it is more likely that a child will develop hepatitis B in a long-term way versus an adult. Worldwide, hepatitis B is one of the most common risk factors for liver cancer. Someone who has that chronic infection with hepatitis B is 100 times more likely to develop liver cancer than somebody who's uninfected. So, the HPV vaccine came out a couple years ago that was discussed as being a vaccination against cancer. Hepatitis B is very much the same thing. If you haven't been vaccinated against hepatitis B, I would encourage you to talk to your doctor. It is a series of 3 shots, though one was released last year that was only 2 shots. Those should be lifelong vaccinations. It's not a bad idea every so often to get double checked. Make sure you're still at a safe spot with your immunity. And if your doctor needs to, they can give you a booster shot to bring you up to a spot where you should be. So while we have vaccine for prevention, there's some other things that you can do to prevent infection with hepatitis B. I'm going to pause, explain what C is, and then kind of get into those prevention strategies as they're pretty similar for both B and C. So hepatitis C is a virus that lives only in our blood. It's spread just through direct blood-to-blood contact. So it's not even enough to get that infected blood on your skin. It needs a pathway into your bloodstream. Unlike hepatitis B, where most people who are exposed can fight it off with their own immune system, Hepatitis C develops into a chronic infection, so a lifelong infection, in about 75 to 85% of people who are exposed. Thankfully, hepatitis C is now curable, and that cure is becoming more and more accessible. Hepatitis C, if left untreated, can lead to significant liver damage. Just like hepatitis B is a common risk for liver cancer, so is hepatitis C. Currently in the United States, Hep C is the leading cause of liver cancer and the leading cause of liver transplants. There is no vaccine for hepatitis C either. As Carla said earlier, I do educate a lot of folks, and the number of times I've talked to somebody and said, do you know your risk factors for hepatitis C? And then they say, well, I've been vaccinated. There is no vaccine for C. So do be aware of how you might catch it, that it is this blood-to-blood interaction. So it's not a casual contact sort of virus. But if you are thinking about becoming pregnant, you should get screened. With hepatitis B, it is very likely that a child exposed to hepatitis B will develop a chronic infection. Hepatitis C can be transmitted from mother to child at birth, but it's a smaller risk. It's about a 5 or 6% chance. If you're having unprotected sex, your partner or with multiple partners, you may be at risk for contracting B and C. Hepatitis B, because it's found in semen and vaginal fluid, does pose a higher risk for sexual transmission than hepatitis C. There is a small risk of sexual transmission with C, but it's a little bit less because it is only in blood. If you've ever shared equipment to inject or inhale or snort drugs to use intranasally, it's very important you get checked. It's also very important that when possible, people utilize needle exchanges so they're not sharing equipment to use drugs. Make sure that you have your own personal care equipment. It's a very good idea to have your own razor, toothbrush, nail clippers, anything that might get a little blood on it. Better safe than sorry, just have your own set. And if you're getting tattooed or pierced, just make sure your artist is following the proper precautions, using fresh one-time use needles and pouring out fresh ink. So to kind of get into who should be tested, get tested for hepatitis B if you've immigrated from a country where it's more common. We do see higher rates of hepatitis B in people who have immigrated from African countries, Asian countries, Eastern Europe, even Mediterranean countries. There are higher rates in some Caribbean and South American countries as well. It comes down to not using the vaccination, I think, as commonly as we do here in the United States, but do get tested if you have immigrated from one of those countries. If you have a family member or sexual partner with hepatitis B, it's important to get tested. Should you be negative, please do get vaccinated as a great way of prevention. If you have multiple sexual partners, getting tested for hepatitis B is important. You can have that just as part of your regular STD checks. And if you are, working in an environment where maybe you're more likely to come in contact with somebody's bodily fluids, so a healthcare worker, firefighter, police officer, EMT, mortuary attendant, or even a daycare worker, the likelihood that somebody in one of those professions would come in contact with bodily fluid is much higher. So get tested. If you're negative, get vaccinated, and then you won't have to worry about it. And then getting tested for hepatitis C. The thing with hepatitis C is that we see very high rates amongst baby boomers. So anybody born between 1945 and this should actually be 1965. I apologize for that. For many years now, the Center for Disease Control, the CDC, has recommended that baby boomers get screened for hepatitis C. Baby boomers are about 5 times more likely to have hep C than other adults. This really comes down to us not knowing what the virus was until the late 80s, early 90s. Anybody who received a blood transfusion prior to 1992 should get tested. Again, that we didn't know what it was. We weren't looking for it. So some people got tainted blood transfusions. Being on long-term hemodialysis. Again, as I said on the previous slide, if you've ever shared needles or equipment to inject drugs or straws to use intranasally, please do get tested. When it comes to hepatitis C, this virus has a long lifeline outside of our body, so it can live for about 3 weeks on a surface at room temperature. So when it comes to injection drug use, it's not just the needle that can pose a risk, it's any piece of the equipment. If you've had abnormal liver function tests or liver enzyme tests on multiple blood draws, you should ask your doctor to check for something like hepatitis C. So when we get our liver function tests or our liver enzymes or a liver panel, our doctor is looking at some basic enzymes that our liver creates that can really quickly tell them how our liver is functioning. If these are high on one blood draw, it's not too much cause for concern, as they can be easily influenced tests. But if they remain high, that indicates that your liver is under kind of a constant insult. So they have to figure out what's going on. Again, you should get tested for hepatitis C if you're a healthcare or emergency medical worker who may be exposed to needle sticks or blood. Being born to an infected mother, as I said earlier, this is about a 5 or 6% chance. Unprotected sex with multiple partners or history of STDs. Having multiple STDs is going to make your immune system a little bit weaker, and just the risk of possibly getting something from a number of partners. As I said, hepatitis C does not live in semen or vaginal fluid, but if there is that blood-to-blood interaction between partners, it can be spread. If you've ever received tattoos or body piercings with unsterile needles. I did a big project with veterans this last year, and a lot of the guys I worked with said, you know, I did get a tattoo when I was overseas, and it can sometimes be as simple as that. So, you know, think back if you've had any sort of, any one of these risk factors, it is important to get tested. And if you've ever shared a razor, toothbrush, nail clippers with someone who has Hep C, this is a smaller chance than something like sharing a needle, but it is a chance or a risk nonetheless. So we're going to shift gears now. Again, if you have any questions about viral hepatitis A, B, or C, please feel free to put them in the question box and we'll be sure to get to those. So like I said earlier, alcohol in your liver, most people know that these two things don't get along too well. Excessive alcohol use can lead to severe liver disease. And what I want to call your attention to today is that not everyone who drinks excessively has alcohol use disorder or is what we've traditionally called an alcoholic. You may be drinking more than you should and not really realize it. So, you know, whether you're at home right now or later today, I'd love for you to pull out a glass and pour what you think is one drink of hard liquor. So gin, rum, vodka, whiskey, one drink of wine, one drink of beer, and you might be a little surprised that you might be pouring more than one actual drink. So what's considered one drink of distilled liquor is 1.5 ounces. I educate some high school students, and this is something that I will do with them. I'll say, you know, I'll have a drink and I'll pour it out and I'll say, tell me when. And typically it's not just one drink they're pouring, it's multiple drinks per glass. So be mindful of how much you're actually pouring. 5 ounces of wine. Again, sometimes we have those very large wine glasses. You pour what looks to be 5 ounces to you, but that could be more or less than what you really think. And 12 ounces of beer. I do want to bring your attention that this isn't every single wine. This is 5 ounces of 12% alcohol wine. So if you're drinking a wine that has 14%, you should be drinking less than 5 ounces. If you're drinking a beer, you know, a lot of craft beers these days tend to have a lot higher alcohol content. You should be drinking less than 12 ounces in order to consider that one drink. So what does excessive alcohol use look like? So this may surprise you, but for women, heavy drinking is 8 drinks or more per week. So say you go home every day, you have a glass of alcohol, you know, a glass of wine before you go to bed. You may be able to do that once a day, but then on the weekend, maybe you go out and you want to have a couple drinks, you've just hit heavy drinking. So 8 drinks or more. Moderate drinking for a woman is not even, it's up to 1 drink per day. For men, it's up to 2 drinks per day, so heavy drinking is considered 15 drinks or more per week. Again, this tends to astonish people that is what's heavy drinking. That's too much for your liver to consume. Pregnant women should not drink. Anybody under the age of 21 should not drink. And then this idea of binge drinking. So you might think about binge drinking as just an all night long party or drinking. For women, it's 4 or more drinks consumed on one occasion. One occasion here being defined as about 2 hours. So, you know, a backyard barbecue for 2 hours long. If you're drinking more than 4 drinks, you're drinking too much. our livers can actually only process about a drink an hour. So when you're introducing more than that, that's where you're getting your blood alcohol content from. So this idea of 4 or more drinks in 2 hours or 5 or more drinks for men, that is excessive alcohol use. This might be astonishing to some of you. I know it was for me. So our liver breaks down alcohol so it can get out of our body. When you introduce more than what your liver can handle, it can cause significant liver injury and some preventable diseases. So another quick statistic for you. So an estimated 88,000 people die from alcohol-related causes every year in the United States. This is the 3rd leading preventable cause of death in our country. The first is tobacco, and the second is poor diet and physical inactivity. So alcohol does result in social impact. It results in preventable deaths, whether car accidents or one of these liver-related diseases. So alcohol-related hepatitis. This is inflammation of the liver because of alcohol. This can be accompanied by more severe symptoms like nausea, jaundice, so yellowing of the skin or the eyes, and some abdominal pain. Most people tend to feel that pain in the upper right hand, right where your liver sits. There are some things that can influence whether or not you develop this condition. So yes, it's the amount of that you're drinking, but it can also be genetic factors. Some of us are more or less genetically predisposed to processing alcohol out of our body. We might have a little bit more of a certain enzyme needed to break that alcohol down. So if you're just genetically set up to not be able to cope with alcohol, you might be at a higher risk. Like I said earlier, make sure you're telling your doctor about any family history of liver disease, even if it's alcohol related. If somebody's malnourished, or if somebody has another liver disease. So, you know, alcohol, as we're talking about right now, can damage a perfectly healthy liver. But if somebody has another condition like hepatitis C, it's gonna add double damage. So the nicer you can be to your liver, with hepatitis C or another liver disorder, the better off your liver will be. So recovery is possible from alcohol-related hepatitis. It's a matter of abstaining from drinking. So this simply means your liver has become amazingly inflamed and injured in the short term. If you remove what caused that inflammation, in this case alcohol, that will settle down and your liver will be able to repair itself. Next, fatty liver disease. Fatty liver disease is just what it sounds. It's an excess of fat in the liver. This can lead to inflammation over time, or it can just be a little bit of extra fat in the liver. If inflammation occurs from the fat, so if somebody gets what I referred to earlier as steatohepatitis, inflammation from fat, that can eventually lead to scarring, fibrosis, and cirrhosis, just like we discussed earlier. This is very common in alcohol-related liver diseases. Symptoms are pretty rare. Unfortunately, the liver is a relatively non-complaining organ. Some people experience that upper abdominal discomfort, so a feeling like almost an overinflated balloon in the right side. Some people might get dark urine or some fatigue, but a lot of times symptoms aren't readily obvious that it's a sign of a significant liver disease. Again, fatty liver is reversible. Fatty liver is that presence of fat. If you're able to stop drinking and remove what that factor causing your liver to store that fat, it's going to go away over time and your liver will bounce back. The liver is very forgiving. And finally, alcohol-related cirrhosis. So cirrhosis, like I said earlier, is the extreme scarring of the liver, a point where you have more scar tissue than healthy liver tissue. That scar tissue is not functioning the way that your liver should. So this is one of the alcohol resulted in some of the highest rates of cirrhosis we see in young folks. So in 2013, the proportion of alcohol-related cirrhosis was highest among deaths of persons ages 25 to 34. Of many liver disease deaths, about 47% involved alcohol. Cirrhosis at a certain point is going to be too severe and won't be able to regenerate. Some livers may be able to bounce back a little bit in abstinence, but many people will need transplant or will unfortunately pass away from alcohol-related cirrhosis. It's very important to stay engaged in your healthcare, to make sure you're talking to your doctor honestly about any risks that you may have, alcohol or diet related, and do what you can to keep your liver healthy. So we just talked about fatty liver from alcohol. For a very long time, doctors thought alcohol was the only reason you could get fatty liver. But then we started seeing people get fatty liver who never touched alcohol. And that's why this has been dubbed non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So fatty liver, not from alcohol. Again, I'm going to refer to it as NAFLD. Some people call it NAFLD. I'm going to call it NAFLD. NAFLD, just like fatty liver in the presence of alcohol, is a fat accumulation in the liver that can be mild or it can get to be more severe. If the liver starts to store this extra fat, it's not from alcohol. It's often as a result of being overweight, being obese, having type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol or triglycerides, not getting enough exercise. And NAFLD can progress to what we call NASH, non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. So again, that inflammation from fat. And over time, it can lead to fibrosis, cirrhosis, liver cancer, and liver failure. Where currently liver hepatitis C is the leading cause for liver transplants in the US, many doctors think that soon NAFLD will be the leading cause of liver transplants. This is becoming a large issue here. People will live with this for many years, not really having symptoms until they're progressing on to that point of maybe swelling, hepatitis, or even cirrhosis. In the United States, between 30 to 40% of adults have NAFLDs, and this is something we're seeing in children as well. So close to 10% of children ages 2 to 19 have NAFLDs. So this isn't something that we're just seeing in adults. This is something we're seeing in people of all ages. So how is it treated? Treatment and prevention for NAFLD right now is pretty similar. When it comes to treatment, weight loss is key. So if you are overweight, losing some weight is going to really go a long way to helping your liver get healthy. Doctors suggest between 7 to 10% of body weight. So it doesn't need to be an extreme weight loss. You don't need to lose 100 pounds. Say you're 250 pounds, losing 25 pounds can go a long way to make your liver a happier camper. And eating a healthy diet. So a lot of times in our country, we're eating this very hyper-processed diet. It seems like everything you pick up on the shelf now has high fructose corn syrup or some word that you can't pronounce. ChooseMyPlate.gov. This is kind of the new food pyramid. So we don't really use the food pyramid anymore. Now it's all about what's on our plate. Make sure most of your plate is fruits and vegetables. You should have some nice whole grains there and some protein, maybe some dairy. It sounds a little funny, but the best diet advice I've heard from a liver doctor is when you're in the grocery store, try to stick to the outside sweep. So everything that's in the grocery store that's good for you tends to live on the outside. You got those fruits and vegetables, you have that produce section, you got protein, you have your healthy meats, chicken, beef, pork, you have that whole proteins. You have cheese, eggs, you have dairy. It's when you spend more time in the aisle that you are going to be selecting more processed foods. Sure, you can grab a couple things in those aisles, but most of what's in your cart should be coming from that outside of the store. So remember the outside sweep. Exercise is also huge. Our livers are pretty basic. They like a little bit of exercise every week. If you can get your heart rate up for about 30 minutes every single day, your liver is going to be a happy camper. So much of what we do, just like this right now, sitting in front of a computer, on a phone, we do a lot of sitting. If you can get up and you can move more, your liver is going to be a lot happier. If you have type 2 diabetes, try to get those numbers down. And if you have high cholesterol or high triglycerides, just try to bring those down, whether it's going on medication or, again, diet changes. So just to wrap up on NAFLD, prevention is very much the same. So it's watching what we eat, watching how much we're exercising, making sure we don't get high triglycerides. We're learning more and more about this. NAFLD is certainly an area of research right now for doctors. But if you're worried, if you're concerned, make sure you're talking to your doctor about it. The American Liver Foundation also has a lot of resources on NAFLD NASH. We even have some great YouTube videos on cooking with doctors, and they provide great liver healthy meals. So some other risks to liver health. Like I said earlier, our liver processes whatever we eat, drink, breathe, and absorb through our skin. That even comes down to household cleaners. Say you're in your bathroom, you don't have the window open, there's no fan on, you're spraying 409 or Lysol or any number of household cleaners. All that you're breathing in or absorbing through your hands, if you're not wearing gloves, that's all going to be seen by your liver. So the more you can protect yourself, whether using a mask, gloves, making sure you're in a well-ventilated area, not only is it going to help your whole body, but it will certainly help your liver. Cigarette smoking. Again, I do a lot of work in the community, and a lot of people think, how on earth can cigarette smoking affect my liver? Whatever we're smoking in from that cigarette is going to be absorbed into our bloodstream, and that's going to end up in our liver. Cigarette smoke can actually make fatty liver disease worse. It can exacerbate it, whether it's from alcohol or from diet. So if you have a fatty liver, quitting smoking is going to go a long way to helping your liver bounce back. Prescription drugs and over-the-counter medications. This is something I do want to talk about briefly. So a lot of times we think, if I can buy something over the counter, it's fine, I'm going to take it. Vitamins, herbal remedies, I don't even have to ask my doctor. I'm going to just start it. My friend uses it. They love it. I'm going to do it. That's not always the case. A great example of this is green tea. A cup of green tea is wonderful for you. It has antioxidants. It's nice and relaxing and calming. A green tea supplement can actually lead to liver damage. There was an article recently about a man in Texas who took a green tea supplement for 3 months. He hadn't mentioned it to his doctor because he thought, what's the harm? And then he woke up one morning bright yellow and full on liver failure and needed a liver transplant just from taking that green tea supplement for 3 months. Make sure you talk to your doctor before starting any vitamins or any supplements. Also, feel free to use the pharmacists in your local pharmacy. They can help counsel you on over-the-counter medications. And the last medication I'm going to talk about is acetaminophen. So acetaminophen is often found in Tylenol. It is the active ingredient in Tylenol. It's safe when you take the right amount. It's just really easy to take too much. Acetaminophen is found in many over-the-counter prescription or over-the-counter medications. Make sure you're double checking labels. A lot of times, we pull a cough medicine off the shelf. We think it's great for us. It might have acetaminophen. Maybe you already took Tylenol earlier that day. You've now just taken more than you intended to. Double check labels. And if something says, do not drink alcohol while taking this medication, by no means is that a suggestion. It's too much for your liver to process at once. So even if you just start thinking about your liver health, you're going to be ahead of the game. A lot of people don't tend to think about their liver until there's something wrong with it. So even if you start double checking those labels, double checking what you're putting in your cart, it's going to go a long way. And make sure you tune into your body. If something seems not quite right, tell your doctor. Keep a list of these signs and symptoms that you might not think that they're anything major, but your doctor might be able to look at those and put something together that you're not able to. If you do have any yellow discoloration of your skin or eyes, this is a sign of liver upset. Please do see your doctor. If you have any abdominal swelling or severe pain, again, in that upper right quadrant mainly, talk to your doctor. Prolonged itching of the skin. This is an itch that almost comes from the inside out. It's pretty severe. Dark urine, pale, bloody, or tar-like stools. Chronic fatigue, nausea, or loss of appetite. Loss of sexual drive or performance, and sleep disturbance or mental confusion. It's easy to write some of these symptoms off as, oh, I'm just fatigued because I didn't sleep very well. Maybe I'm nauseous because I haven't been eating great. If you see these things persisting, talk to your doctor. And as a reminder, more information can be found on our website, liverfoundation.org. We have a hepatitis C specific website. It's called hepc123.org. We have a national helpline that is staffed by some wonderful, intelligent folks, 1-800-GO-LIVER. We're on Facebook and Twitter. We also have an online support community, inspire.com. And I would just as just a point of reference, please be conscientious of where you're getting your information online. Not all websites are created equally, and it can be pretty dangerous to just type your symptoms into Google and click on that first link. Make sure you're looking at reliable resources, things like the Department of Health, Center for Disease Control, National Institute of Health, the Veterans Affairs, or any of these others. Also, NeedyMeds has some great resources on their website. So, at the end of the day, keep calm and love your liver. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Carla.
Lindsay, thank you so much for that thorough and very informative presentation. And I'm glad our audience got the chance to see why we value our partnership with the American Liver Foundation and Lindsay so much. They really are a wealth of information and work really hard to bring to the public's attention why a healthy liver is so important. Lindsay gave us a lot of information, so I will remind everybody that today's webinar is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel. We'll try and convert that as soon as we can. And of course, copies of today's webinars are in the handout section of your GoToWebinar control panel. I want to encourage people to feel free to submit questions to Lindsay, or if you have any questions about NeedyMeds, and you can do that in the questions section of your GoToWebinar control panel. I do see some questions coming in. And while questions are being submitted, I'm going to take a moment to remind everybody that we also hope you turn to NeedyMeds as a source of support and resources. What you're looking at on your screen are some of the ways NeedyMeds can help you save on your medications. Lindsay listed some people, to get their liver healthy, have to get some diagnoses that they are living with under control, and oftentimes doing that does require medication. If you're having trouble affording your medication, be it over-the-counter or prescription, we hope that you do turn to us for a resource. To learn more about NeedyMeds, we do encourage you to visit our website, specifically check out that patient savings tab that I referred to in the beginning of the presentation, and join us if you have a chance for one of our monthly NeedyMeds overview webinars. And speaking of webinars, here are the ones that are coming up. Our next overview webinar that I just mentioned is on February 5th. And we're really particularly excited about the Becoming an Empowered Patient webinar. So we do hope you can join us for that. With that, I'm going to go ahead and ask Lindsay some of the questions coming in from our audience members. So here's a great question, and probably one you get often. Is there anything I can do to take care of my liver? Food I can eat or supplements I can take? I hear a lot about milk thistle.
So there, as I said in the presentation, watching what you're eating, making sure you get some exercise during the week. You don't need to be out training for the marathon, but just getting your heart rate going for about 30 minutes once a day is really going to make your liver happy. There are surprisingly some foods, one of which tends to be a surprise to most folks, but coffee can actually be really good for your liver. Drinking between 2 to 4 cups a day can protect your liver against cirrhosis and liver cancer. Don't go out and drink, 6 pots, but a couple cups a day can be helpful for your liver. Also be mindful of the amount of cream and sugar you're adding. In terms of milk thistle and other supplements, again, speak to your doctor. While milk thistle has long been heralded as this incredible thing for your liver, there's not a lot of research to suggest that it's going to help, but there's also not a lot of research that it's going to suggest it's going to hurt. As I said, just before starting the medication or supplement, talk to your doctor. That's going to be your safest route.
Thank you so much, and thank you for mentioning that if you are turning to coffee a couple of times a day to keep your liver healthy, watching that cream and sugar, because I can certainly turn my coffee or tea into its own dessert. Another question coming in is, I had hepatitis C. It's cured now, which we're happy to hear. Thank you for sharing that. Is there anything I should be doing to keep my liver healthy?
Yeah, definitely. So when it comes to hepatitis C, the first thing to do is to be mindful of where was your liver damaged when you got rid of the virus. So I spoke briefly about the staging of liver disease, 1, 2, 3, and 4. if you cure your hepatitis C and you're in a stage 1 or a stage 2, just doing general liver health things will allow your body to let that liver regenerate. So it's almost like having a fire that's been fed gasoline. Not only do you have to stop feeding it gasoline, but you got to give it time to go out. So you need to let that liver have some nice healthy time in your body to bounce back. If your doctor does put you at a stage 3 or a stage 4, even when you cure that virus, even when you get rid of hepatitis C, you got to make sure you're going for liver cancer screenings. It's essential that liver cancer is picked up as soon as possible so that you do have treatment options. So just really the best thing you can do is to stay engaged in your healthcare, to watch what you're eating and drinking, medications you're taking, and making sure that you're talking to your doctor openly and honestly about any risks that you might think about for your liver.
Thank you so much. And I will mention on the NeedyMeds website, on the left-hand side, you'll see a link to Be MedWise, which is a new program supported by NeedyMeds. And that is a website that has tons of information about patient education. And on there, you'll find some helpful tips on how to have a productive conversation with your doctor, for example. So I just wanted to mention that other resource. Another great question coming in. My doctor said something to me about my liver numbers or functions being high from the blood work she did. What does that mean? Should I be worried?
Right. So those liver numbers, like I said a little earlier, we have liver function tests that maybe at our annual physical our doctor checks out. It's a good quick screening method to see if anything's going on with your liver. It is not a huge cause for concern to have those numbers be out of range just once. So your doctor, in all likelihood, is going to want you to come back in a little bit, maybe a couple months, to do that blood work again to see if those numbers have stabilized. Those numbers are really easily influenced. Say I went out last night and I ate a really fatty meal, maybe I had a glass of wine with dinner. If I got my liver function test done today, they would probably be high. If I go back in a couple weeks, they're going to normalize back out. I've insulted my liver in the short term, but in the long term, it's okay. If you are deeply concerned about your liver's health, there are imaging tests that can be done, things like an ultrasound where they look at your liver like they look at a baby, or something called a fibroscan. This is where they test to see how much scar tissue has begun to build in your liver. So there are additional tests that you can talk to your doctor about, but I wouldn't get hyper concerned about one blood test being high. More than likely, your doctor is going to run those tests again, and your liver numbers should have stabilized. If they do come back high again, please feel free to call us at 1-800-GO-LIVER.
Thank you again, Lindsay, for another thorough response, and thank you to our audience members for participating with those great questions. That's all the time we've allotted for questions today. What you're looking at on a screen is both the contact information for the American Liver Foundation and NeedyMeds. We do hope you stay in touch and reach out to us if we can be of support in any way. Again, if you ask a question and we were not able to get to it, we will follow up with you via email. And I do want to mention that we are very happy to report that the American Liver Foundation will be doing a series of webinars for NeedyMeds throughout 2019. So please do check back by visiting our calendar of events to see when the next one is scheduled. For now, thank you to Lindsay for sharing her expertise with the NeedyMeds audience, and thanks to the NeedyMeds audience for taking time out of the day to join us. And we do hope you see us at future webinars. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Carla. I appreciate you inviting us.
Have a great rest of the day, everyone. Take care.